Hey sports fans, welcome to the Cavalier Sports Report. I am your host, Shawn Simpson, and joining me in the studio today is athletic trainer Ben Edwinson. Ben, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about what it is that you do here.
Well, basically we take care of the athlete's injuries, and on top of that we try to prevent injuries. And if someone does get injured, we do our best to treat them, rehab them, and get them back into their sport.
Okay, so we have a lot of athletes here, and so that sounds like a pretty big job. How many athletes are you dealing with at a time?
Around 200, a little under 200 total. Certainly not all in there at once, but we have 3 athletic trainers and a group of students that help us, so we have a pretty good team.
Okay, so with the different sports, what would you say is the most? Which one would you say takes up probably the most amount of time in terms of injuries? Probably not in the preparation, because I'd imagine they all have to take good care of themselves, but in injuries.
It depends on the time of year. Now, in the fall, I work with the soccer teams, and my life revolves around soccer for a couple, 3 months. And then track is our biggest team, so they, of course, have more athletes, more injuries. And then, let's say, in the spring, I mean, I'd say track is the most popular sport for injuries. But, of course, baseball and softball have their injuries as well.
Yeah. Now, I know in my younger days, playing the trainer was the guy that either taped you together to send you out on the field or came and scraped you up off the grass when you were hurt.
Yes.
And it was never a terribly pleasant experience, but you're always happy to see them. What would you say has been probably the worst injury that you've ever had to deal with in your time here?
6 or 7 years ago, we had a women's soccer game going on, and one of our opponent's athletes got taken out by her own keeper and broke her lower leg in half. So there was no open wounds or blood or anything, but it was certainly broken in half.
Now, in that case, was that something that you have to deal with on site and then get an ambulance, or is that something you have to deal with and then send her away? How do you handle that? We
stabilized her on the field, splinted it, checked her vitals, and kept her calm while an ambulance was on their way. And then they loaded her up and took her to the hospital.
Now, the type of training that you have for dealing with athletes, because you have to deal with nutrition and the athletic training element of it for weights and whatnot, and then also the injury side of things. But what type of training would you say, what type of education goes into that in terms of either your medical training or nutrition training? What went into your education?
We hit a little bit of everything. We certainly had a nutrition class, and of course we had our specialized core classes in athletic training, dealing with different injuries, treating them, rehabbing all those injuries. And we did, the weight training kind of went into the rehab class, and so that doubled up for that. But we hit just about everything. We did some different types of body fat testing, things along those lines too, a class just for that.
Yeah. Now, we don't have a football team here at Johnson County Community College, so that does eliminate some amount of athletes that you have to deal with, but you still have a high number of them. Is there any difference in working with men and women athletes that you have to be really conscious of?
Nothing outrageously different, but the men tend to hide their injuries a little bit more than the women do, and they will oftentimes not come in until they just can't walk. And you'll ask them, how long has this been bothering you? They'll say, well, only a month, but but now they can't walk, so the process is slowed down.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, at what point in your life, in your education, maybe in your athletic career, did you decide you wanted to get into athletic training?
Well, it's interesting. When I went to college, I decided my major was going to be history. So this is a far cry from that. But my first class in college ever was a history class, and I knew about 5 minutes into it that I was not going to be a history major. So I had a couple friends that were majoring in sports medicine and talked to them and learned about what they were doing. And I've always enjoyed sports, so I found a way to be around it.
And you have your master's degree. You are out on the field all the time working with this. Where do you see yourself going from here? Is this something you just continue going here, or do you see yourself continuing to grow in your field?
I started a high school in DeSoto, which I really enjoyed, and then I came here, didn't know much of anything about community colleges. But the more I've been, I've been here 10 years, so I've learned a lot, and I've learned that I really like it here. I like this level of athletics. Not having football is not bad either. But I've also spoken with some people that have worked in the professional ranks, and I've heard about the number of hours they put in per week and just how their lives work. And of course, I went to KU, so I know about the Division I level of athletics, and it's rough. It's rough to have a family life or an outside life of any sort and still do your job. So I like it here. I'd like to stay here as long as I can.
Great. Now, is there any advice with, we talk a lot about youth sports and, well, particularly with high school athletes coming in. Is there any advice that you would give someone who's a high school athlete or just a young athlete that could be something that you would like to see them know coming into a collegiate career from a training perspective?
Yes. First off, always let someone know if you're hurt. My kids play sports and they're fairly young, so I always ask them a lot, does this hurt? Does that hurt? Do you feel okay? And if you're in high school, making sure that you understand how to lift weights and how to work out and how to strengthen the right muscles to help keep your body in good shape when you're playing sports is extremely important. We have a lot of freshmen come in here, and some have never even stepped foot in the weight room. And some have, but they don't know what they're doing. And so they end up getting injured, whereas if they were a little stronger, they probably could have prevented that.
Great. Well, Ben, thank you so much for everything that you do, keeping our great sports teams on the field and healthy. So
Absolutely.
We really appreciate you coming in today, and look forward to continuing to see our teams on the field and seeing you out there with them.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for today. And on behalf of the whole JCAV team, I'd like to thank our guest, Ben Edwinson. I'm Shawn Simpson, and this has been your Cavalier Sports Report.